Dr. Jaquish, finally, I've gotten a hold of you for a face-to-face conversation. How have you been?
Great. Yeah, I'm glad we connected.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The reason I'm having you on, you have an interesting perspective with regard to health in general. One that I don't typically post publicly with my material. And so I wanted to get that perspective today with respect to the recent sort of controversy. It's sort of dying out, but I believe it's still urgent enough to get everyone's perspective on this and to
Sure.
crack down on a lot of this because a lot of it's nonsense. The controversy that's been happening with people that are on a carnivore, zero carb, or at least very low carb diet, adding carbohydrates back in. And we're not just talking about 20 or 30 grams, we're talking about hundreds of grams a day. And so I want to get your perspective on this because one reason that is cited for this is to do with performance. And I'm sure you've heard this argument before. You need carbohydrates for performance. You need to eat lots of carbs for performance. And you're someone that, from my
Yeah, fat
understanding,
people say all kinds of things.
yeah, yeah. Whether it's obese or obese brain, whatever it may be, a fat
Yeah.
brain. But I wanted to get your perspective on the situation as someone that, from my understanding, it has attained their physique primarily with having very little to no carbohydrates
Oh,
in
no,
in
that's the
their
truth.
in
Yep,
their diet. So
yep, yep.
you're a rare individual in that sense. Most people in the fitness space do not do that. They're having lots of carbohydrates. They're doing or at least the ones that are on online that are
I
publicly posting about this
okay.
saying, oh, you need a carb load and all that. Yeah,
Let me
here,
jump
talk.
in
Yeah.
right there because I
Okay, go
think
ahead.
so biochemistry is complicated. You can ask anybody who's taken like an organic chemistry class
Hmm.
who probably got like a D minus the first time they took it. Um, a lot going on. So the effort that so many try and make in that they want their fitness advice summarized into a meme, like a sentence fragment and a funny picture. Like, guys, there are libraries of books written on this subject and associated subjects. It's not like, you know, it's going to be that simple. Now, I would say from a general perspective, if I'm in an elevator and somebody looks me up and down and they're like, "Damn, you're in great shape. Like, what's your nutrition like?" Well, I love the question because it has a lot more to do with nutrition than anything else. Now, I tell
Hmm.
them I do use a heavy strength training solution. However, when and I'm actually just getting ready to do a video on this, so you're getting a primer for it.
Okay.
When looking at macronutrients in isolation, which is I think something that's missing from this argument, and there's plenty of research on this. When people do protein sparing modified fasts, they gain muscle, like full stop. And they might be having 300 calories in a day and they're gaining muscle mass.
Right.
It's like, and when looking at the talk, now I don't think these studies ever get publicized because who the hell wants to just consume protein powder?
Right. Yeah.
Now, I do it with Fortigen, which is a really,
Hmm.
really good protein powder. So I think it's a lot easier by doing it that way. And, I mean, and also some of the carnivore like purists, like Dr. Baker, I've said, hey, you want me to send you a case of Fortigen? And he's like, no, man, I just eat steak. Okay.
Right.
That's cool. But I like okay, let's find an answer here. Let's look at macros in isolation. And when you look at macros in isolation, protein drives muscle growth.
Shocker.
Nothing else has anything to do with it. I mean, yes, you need fats for like your skin to be like lubricated and you need to be able to blink. Like
Right.
you'll notice if you
Yeah.
cut fat out of your diet, like your eyes will get real dry. In fact, if you look at my podcast from like a couple years ago, I made that mistake. I think I went less than like 50 grams of fats. And I'm like doing this all the time. Like, why are my eyes drying out? And then Dave Asprey I had lunch with him one day, and he's like, "Are your fats super low right now?" I said, "Yeah." How'd you know? He's like, "You're blinking all the time." So, I mean, I didn't consciously try and drive fat down. I was just, starting to experiment with protein sparing modified fast and like, what else
Yeah.
do I need to keep this going? Do I need refeed days? Uh, what do I need? The ultimate conclusion is what drives muscle growth is protein. And so the people who say, oh, yeah, you need carbs, well, they might be eating carbs, but I promise you they're getting the minimum amount of protein, and
Yep.
that's what's doing it. And the carbs, yeah, they do add to the fullness of a muscle.
Yes. Yeah.
So, even Professor K, who I think is the smartest guy in nutrition alive today. I put him right up there with Tim Noakes. Uh, he'll even say if you really want your body to look good, you need some carbohydrates. But what he's saying is just the hydration. But it doesn't mean your muscles are performing any better. It just means they look better.
Yep. Hmm. Yep.
So, okay. So I looked into that. What is the minimum or optimal amount of carbohydrates to get to glycogen replenishment after a strength workout? Because ultimately, that's where it's going to be the lowest. And especially variable resistance is actually used as a tool in wiping out glycogen. Like glycogen studies, they all use variable resistance, but it's just like, why? It's not even a training study. It's because you get to the bottom of the tank with variable
Yeah.
resistance. You don't
Yep.
with other exercise. And I think that's also like a huge thing. Like, wow, we should really benefit by all hearing that. What exhausts the muscle fully? Well, obviously, what gets rid of all the glycogen. So why aren't we doing only that? Uh, but that's for a different video. But you're looking at this and it's like, okay, carbohydrates, they can facilitate the hydration of muscle, which can make you look better. And I think that's the distracting factor. That's
Hmm.
where people they say they perform better. That is absolute bullshit. Like studies where people are absent of carbohydrates, who are even accustomed to having carbohydrates all the time, their performance does not drop. They might think it's dropped. They might assume it has, but when you look at maximum outputs, it's not happening. So the idea that
Right.
you have a performance loss with a lack of carbohydrates, it's just not true. I can go 5 days with no carbohydrates, and I'll be breaking personal records in strength.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Like I'll be gaining muscle. Like if you're getting stronger, you're gaining muscle. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean that's the other thing. It's like, well, how come I can just consume Fortigen? I can have 24 calories a day, and I break all my strength records, like all of them.
Hmm. Well, also, if anything, if you don't have people underestimate when they're eating food as well. Like if you have even within like a 12-hour window, um, there is a lot of blood flow that's being allocated to your stomach for digestion that's not being it's being diverted and taken away from your muscles
That's
for
right.
things like glycogen replenishment
Yeah.
before the next twitch happens in a muscle fiber
Hmm.
for the next contraction. And
Oh,
so
if you
that's some
drink if you drink more than 5 ounces of water in the middle of your workout, you lose 2% of power production capacity.
oh
Water.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because for exactly the reason you're saying, it's like your body's like, well, we got to deal with this water. So
Yeah.
your blood flow gets redirected, and yeah, I mean, it's like don't consume stuff while you're working out.
Well, and also if if you're going to put emphasis on like the idea of ancestral consistency, like what we evolved to withstand on a genotypic level, when we hunted and when we exercised with high intensity training, we were not eating, which is why we were even engaging in that exercise in the first place.
Right.
Because we were hunting an animal, or we weren't hunting water down, but that's not the point. The
Yeah.
point is that when we were exercising, there wasn't anything in our stomachs. That's the whole reason we exercised. And
Yeah.
so
You're
you want to
hungry.
think of,
You got to get
yeah,
up and kill a mammoth.
right. So why, like, it seems extremely counterproductive because it is to eat a bunch of food or like carb load, whatever it is. I mean, even if it's not carbs though, eating a bunch of food and then exercising. I'm not saying it won't work for people or for certain people. Some people, I mean, Sean Baker, I'm pretty sure he says that he eats before he works out.
He does.
Yeah, so it can work for some people.
I was last year. I spent a week with him in Slovakia, and
Yeah.
we stayed in Bratislava, and then we were in Budapest for a day for my birthday. Um, he what he consumes is exactly what he says he consumes.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I have no doubt in my mind. I have
yeah.
no doubt in my mind at all.
Like the
You know, he did that.
zero variation is just like, you gonna have a beer, dude? Nope.
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
It was my birthday. I had beers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
have them for health reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Just if you deviate, don't then make a video and say how talk about how everyone else should deviate too for health reasons. You know, it's like that's
Correct.
what people keep doing. It's like, oh, I decided to have 20 grams of carbs, and here's why you should too.
Right.
It's like, well, according to what, you know?
Right.
But I want
So,
to what I want to
okay.
ask you. I want to ask you. You've been carnivore for years now, or at least again, you know, you deviate here and there, but everyone typically does, unless they're
So
extremely.
it's a great question. I read Dan Duchesne's book in high school. Um, I forgot what it's called. I think it's called like the Underground Fitness book, or I don't know. But it was like this guy was considered a really good coach of elite athletes. And I get this book, and I didn't know why it was called Underground. Well, I realized when I got this book that it was like how to use every performance enhancing drug at the time. It was just about drugs. And I'm just like, this book is, I mean, I'm in high school, right? So it's just like, this is worthless. I'm not going to take any of this stuff. Like, I wouldn't even know where to find it. And I'm not going to because, back then it was before I knew about TRT. And I was just like, steroids are bad for you. I'm not going to do that. And I mean, I just sort of like rolled my eyes at this book, and it's like, how is this guy considered a genius? And all he's talking about is drugs. So I flipped to, it was like the second to last chapter, and it was like the ketogenic diet. And I was like, okay, that's a diet. Maybe I'll read that part. And so I started reading that part. And he talked about just the body has a different fuel system. It has ketones, which can be
Mhm.
used instead of glucose. You have to switch your body's energy system, and people get very lean doing this. And I was like, okay, I can do at least that. So I gave it a shot. And I mean, I was in wrestling at the time, and I got shredded. I got strong. I was like, okay, protein's clearly what's making this happen because that was the prevailing theme in keto. Now, for whatever reason, Dan didn't feel that you could do this for more than like 6 weeks at a time. And so, again, for whatever reason, like he didn't say. And so I just followed the instructions. I was doing it 6 weeks at a time. Sometimes I do it a little bit longer because it's just like, oh, I'm almost to the point where like veins are coming through in my abs. It's wonderful to be in high school. So right. So and I continued to do this on and off all the way through college. I never was very good at putting on muscle. Regular weights did not really do shit for me. But I knew how to be lean. I knew how to be fast. So when I went to college, I played rugby, and I continued with on and off sort of cyclical ketogenic nutrition. And I mean, I was leaner and faster than anybody. And I mean, people who were just like obviously genetically better than me. They would run out of energy. They were carb addicted, and
Right.
low performers, brain fog, soreness, inflammation. None of that shit happened to me. So I was like, I got a huge advantage, and I'd tell them, I'd be like, yeah, it's ketogenic nutrition. I bought a couple copies of the book. When it was somebody I really cared about, I just give them a copy, and they didn't pay any attention because they were like, well, that's not what the pros are doing. And it's like, okay, like pros of what? I mean, pro rugby players, do you even know what they eat? Like, they don't talk about that shit. Like, do you know what NFL players eat? They don't talk about that shit either.
Mm,
So, like, really, bodybuilders. And
right.
is
Yeah.
that a real test? because that sport is like heavily influenced by drugs.
Yep.
Whereas, at least in the NFL, they test these guys. Some of them even get caught every year.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
like when they say, "Oh, those guys are all on juice." No, they're not. That's why they get
Hmm.
caught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How
So
many?
I was in that position, and then it was like the moment I saw Baker on Joe Rogan, I was like, you know what? This guy asked the question that I asked, like, why do we cycle this? Why do we need carbs at all? Like
Yeah.
Dan was crystal clear. Like you gain muscle from protein, and all the other stuff that's not protein, it doesn't do anything for
Yep.
musculature. It might be good for your brain or your skin or hair, whatever. Um, and it was from that moment forward, however you want to look at it, I went even lower carb or I went more dedicated towards close to pure carnivore because I was pure carnivore for a couple years, and then just because I looked flat all the time, I added some carbohydrates back in, but those carbohydrates are just for looks. It's just because it just makes you look a little more pumped all the time from a
Hmm.
muscular perspective. It doesn't do anything for performance. It doesn't do anything for your health. Might
Right.
even like take away from your health to a
Hmm.
degree, depending on how closely you follow the instructions on what I think is the only good meta-analysis on carbohydrate needs in regards to replenishing glycogen. So the study came out about 3 years ago by Menno Henselmans. You know who that is. Um, and Menno was always like a balanced diet kind of guy. And so he performs this meta-analysis and really says like for large, strong strength athletes, male strength athletes, you cannot assimilate more than 30 grams in a day into muscle glycogen. So 30 is
Mm.
like the absolute high limit. So I was like, well, all right, I'm not that big. So I just went with 20.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty low amount. Pretty
Yeah.
low amount. Yeah.
Yeah,
How
and I
many?
mean, if we actually had accurate labeling on some of the meats we eat, because there is
Uh-huh.
glycogen in meat, even though
Yeah.
the nutrition label says the carbohydrate content is zero. It's not zero.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many? You mentioned the you know athletes. You're sort of insinuating that a lot of them, they may very well be eating differently than a lot of people think they are. And I've heard this not from just you. I've heard this from many other people as well.
Yeah.
You deal with some professional athletes, from my understanding,
Yeah, I
correct?
do a lot of them.
Yeah. How many of them are eating what people actually think they're eating, like high carb diets, very, balanced but high carb still, carb load before workouts? How many of them that you, at least that you work with, do that and or were doing that until you started talking to them and sort of, I suppose you could say consulting with them.
You'd be surprised in that almost nobody does that.
Okay.
Like yeah, the idea that that like NFL players are just like eating buckets of rice, to like get their energy. No. Like strength and conditioning coaches, they really know what's going on. And also the best and the brightest of the strength and conditioning coaches, they don't have YouTube channels for whatever reason. None of them have just done that. And so I think a lot of the YouTube recommendations are driven from somewhere between what's been passed around in bodybuilding traditionally and then just
Mm-hmm.
clickbait nonsense.
Yep.
Just like, oh, I'll get a lot of views if I say this. And it's just like
Mm-hmm.
terrible recommendation. But they don't care because it builds their online presence. So I mean, there's a channel, there's a couple channels that where I think they intentionally say stupid recommendations, and it's like, well, you know, like all the comments are this is completely stupid, like this is not going to work,
Uh-huh.
and then of course it's like, well, we don't care what you think, we got a million views.
Yep. Yep. And a lot of that, I mean, a lot of it, that's just what it comes down to at the end of the
Yeah.
day is views. And from my understanding, you didn't start building your physique with this diet. From my understanding, what you would say, or what would you say to people that say that in order to even attain your physique in the first place, you had to have gained at least some of it. You had to get some of the momentum from not eating your current way, very low carb with lots of meat, very low carbohydrates, because there's a lot of people that will say that
Yeah.
you have to get to a certain physique first before your diet can actually work to attain your current one.
Yeah, that's
It's
nonsense. That's
right.
complete nonsense.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. It's like, well, you
Yep.
didn't start off that way. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I was ketogenic in high school because I read about it.
Okay.
It made sense.
Well, that's why I asked you that, because I mean
Yeah.
you said that you had struggled. I think because I read your book. It's been years ago now, but from my understanding, you were using static weights, um, and you reached a plateau in terms of how much you were putting on, how much
Yeah,
muscle
like
mass you were
after I
putting on.
gained 5 pounds, beginner gains in high school, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nothing happened ever with
Right.
weights.
Did you alter? Because again, it's fuzzy now. Did you alter your diet first before you altered your type of training, and then saw gains as a result of that once you went ketogenic in high school? Is that how that went
Um,
originally?
so I was ketogenic in high school. My training
Mm-hmm.
stayed the same until I started using variable resistance, which is right
Okay.
around my 40th birthday. And I
Right.
think it was like a year and a half after that is when I saw Baker on.
Mm-hmm.
So I was gaining muscle because I was still consuming a high amount of protein. Like I don't want to say training, like I think a lot of nutrition guys kind of glaze over the training like it doesn't matter. It matters. Like if you're just going to
Yeah.
stimulate growth, you have to bring the muscle to the point where it absolutely shuts down. Like, despite your greatest effort, the muscle quits on you.
Right.
And I, over the years of talking about this, at first I realized that there's everybody's set up genetically a little different when it comes to tendon attachments. For example, like people of African descent have higher calves, which means they have longer tendons, which means the more of a stretch response from that tendon, the more elastic property, the sort of spring back of their foot flexion goes. So they benefit from what's called recycled energy when they sprint. So like you'll never see a sprinter with low calves. It's,
Mm.
it's that
Mm-hmm.
the genetic advantage is like written right on the back of their legs.
Right.
And that geometry for muscles attaching to bone is echoed throughout the entire physiology with a lot of people. And so they have advantageous connections so that they can engage more muscle really at the bottom of the movements in the stretched position. So when you look at non-responders to weight training, what can make up the difference is higher exercise volume. Well, we also know from other studies, higher exercise volume equates to higher intensity. So you can not do the volume and just train with more intensity. The problem is if you're one of those people who genetically can't recruit enough muscle, well, it's you're just gonna bang up your joints and be sore and grow nothing, which is what I was doing. But with variable resistance, that levels the playing field. Now I don't need to worry about how much muscle I'm activating at the bottom because I'm activating so much more at the top. And then as I go to fatigue, then I'm only calling out the cells that have not gone to fatigue yet.
Mm.
Only the
Yeah,
active
yeah, yeah,
myosin
yeah.
that still has not basically quit in the movement. So I can get
Yes.
complete fatigue experience. So really it's not volume. It's just collection of fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I completely understand what you mean.
Yeah.
I have a question for you that this is obvious. This isn't an adversarial question, but it is a sort of devil's advocate um, argument. when we talk about, we already mentioned, a few minutes ago about how, we talk about what we're designed to do. We're not really, evolutionarily, if you're going to go through that
Right.
lens, we're not designed to eat a bunch of food and then hunt. We covered that before. But if we're going to use the same lens, whenever we were building muscle thousands of years ago, we were using a static weight form, because what we were doing was we were lifting we were lifting items, or objects that were static. And so it's not to say that this isn't a superior method that you've discovered, but how would you justify using that instead of static weights whenever we are most designed through that lens to lift static weights? I've been interested to ask you that question because I'm not even sure that I even have an answer to it. I just want to get
Sure,
your perspective
sure.
on
I mean,
it.
ultimately, looking at how we did things from an ancestral perspective is definitely an interesting academic exercise.
Hmm.
It can help us answer some questions. It can help us get to a better understanding. Um, when we choose to move things from a practical standpoint, not an exercise standpoint, practical, like I got to
Hmm.
move this rock. How do I move it? What's the best way to do that? If you watch movers move stuff, like professional movers, they only use the strong range of motion. They use straps and levers and are very careful to never use the stretch range of motion, only the strongest range of motion. And that's obviously what we did before. In
Right.
the attitude of exercise, the idea that we exercise and it's that's got to mimic like moving rocks in the garden. Not really, because that's not how you would do that if you wanted to be efficient. If you just wanted to move rocks, you get a wheelbarrow. You can carry them,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's like the difference between us and most animals is we use tools.
Yeah.
Where like this is our
Yeah.
muscle. So like comparing functional behaviors and exercise outcomes, it kind of assumes we're as dumb as ants, and we're not. Like we figure it out. And so when it comes to getting the most out of exercise, like just moving things through the weak range of motion, then the strong range of motion, okay. I mean, that certainly is closer to mimicking what you would do in nature, I suppose, even though you would specifically not do that.
Hmm.
But I mean, I guess if you didn't understand the difference between weak and strong range, you might. But then over time, what you're going to do is just end up damaging joints.
Hmm.
And so it's like it's always going to default back to trying to expose load to the stronger range of motion just to be efficient. And it didn't, when we moved stuff around anthropologically, it didn't look anything like weightlifting. Not a chance.
Hmm.
And it also didn't build muscle.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, that is an interesting perspective, because the reason I asked the question is because, I mean, we do know that historically we did have, when you see, like, I guess this is a little ambiguous, when you see these sculptures that were built, they have a lot of muscle on them. The men have a lot of muscle on them,
Oh yeah.
and the question becomes whether or not that was because that was an accurate representation of what people looked like back then, or if it was what people conceptualize as being the ideal if they could get to that point. And then the subsequent question would be,
Yeah.
well, how would they have known if that's what the ideal looks like if no one had ever attained that?
I've
And
got an
of the
answer to
people
this
that have
question.
attained that,
Yeah.
how did they attain it back then?
Yeah.
So no, I want to hear your answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were actually people like that. Like a sculptor can't just imagine
Right.
what a heavily
Yeah.
muscular person would look like, never having seen one.
Yeah. Exactly. Well,
Like they
yeah.
would
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no idea what the developed anatomy would look like. They might have some idea by looking at,
Hmm.
a skin cadaver or something like that. Okay, here's the deltoid, here's the bicep. But it's like, what does it look like when it's developed? They didn't know.
When it's developed. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So they actually had to have people sitting for these sculptures. And I think it's a combination between genetic anomalies and maybe they did something different for, whoever sat for that Hercules statue where he's like kind of leaning on the stump and he's got the skin of the lion, over the stump. Um, that's 800 years old. Where the hell did they find a guy that stand for that? Like clearly there was a guy. So, and this is way before steroids. So like that guy
Right.
clearly knew
Yeah.
how to train. He did something right. Now, like I said with the tendon insertion points, some people are able to recruit more muscle at the bottom, and these are the people who do really well with weight training. I estimate this is somewhere between 1 and 5% of the population. Like I think it's very rare
Mm.
that somebody just picks up weights and grows very easily. Like, yeah, there's people like that out there. And do they need variable resistance? Maybe not. But for the rest of us, yeah, like I couldn't grow muscle without it.
Mm. Yeah.
I
You've
couldn't grow any.
yeah. You mentioned one of these in your TEDx talk. I know that you got a lot of flack for it because if someone said, I think there were a lot of people in the comments saying that you were wrong about something with the like a tendon attachment that goes from here to like
Oh
the
yeah.
elbow or something. Yeah, that was,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
yeah,
but it was
yeah.
just I think you said that it was just a minor slip up and people just really they
Well, what
really
I said
hopped on
is,
you for it.
you have like normally the pectoral insertion is at the top of the humerus bone. And what I
Yeah,
said
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
TED Talk was for people with this genetic anomaly, it's at the other end. And I moved my finger down this way. I didn't mean literally it's all the way on the other end. I meant it's further down. And that's what I should have said. So that's what they're like, "Yeah, it's on the other end. There's no evidence that that's ever happened." And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's a lot of evidence that the people who are stronger do have a further tendon insertion. And the
Yeah.
calf example with people of African descent, like you can just see it on them. So like saying that I
Yeah.
made that up,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
completely obvious. And also, a lot of white sprinters? I
Yeah,
don't.
no.
Yeah,
No, no,
and
no,
it's
no.
and it's absolutely obvious. So, I mean, there's a strong negativity bias on comments of everything on the
Yes.
internet. Yeah,
Well,
because
because
people are jealous. They look and they're like, oh, here's this guy. He's making money on his fitness knowledge, and fuck, that should
mhm,
be me. And never mind the
yeah.
fact that they haven't done any work to justify that.
Uh-huh.
But I mean,
Well,
that's
it's also because you got to think if you had a positive experience encountering a post, then what's going to happen is you're less inclined to actually comment on the post. Like if it's positive, you're like, oh, great, like
yeah.
scroll. But if it's a negative, then you want to write something. So there's a really big respondent bias on posts as well in that
Oh
regard
yeah.
because it's going to have that tilt towards the negative side, and then people are going to
Right,
think,
and then
oh
also
well,
you don't want people to run away with like the negative idea. It's like, oh, this guy says, oh, Jake was just wrong. Well, Jake was isn't wrong. So like, I gotta like be able to explain that. And then sometimes it's like people want you to be wrong, so they'll like even if you respond with accuracy and evidence, they'll still like the first guy's comment who had no evidence at all.
mm-hmm.
And I've seen on some of the comments on your stuff is like that, where somebody will be like, "This is all bullshit," and then that gets like 500 likes, and then you were like, "Okay, here's the evidence," and that gets like 5 likes, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Well, no one wants to read
"Guys,
that.
I
Yeah, no,
don't
no one wants to
understand
read
what
that.
evidence is."
Yeah, nobody wants to read that because also whenever they ask for a source, when people ask for sources, sometimes first of all, sometimes they ask for a source when it's actually not even appropriate to ask for a source. Like, oh, glucose is a 6 carbon aldehyde or some random thing. Sometimes it'll be a claim that's so innocent as that, and they'll be like, source? It's like, what? What
Yeah,
the sun is yellow.
yeah, right.
What the source?
Well,
Oh,
I
this
mean, you can
table in
just
front of me
say
exists.
my way of handling that is you can see that in any physiology book.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah,
sorry, I don't
exactly.
have
Yeah.
links to textbooks for grade school.
Yeah. But also whenever you respond with giving a source for a claim that let's say it is it's acceptable to ask for a source. If you provide one, they don't actually want to see a source. They're not going to read it. What they want to what they're criticizing is that you didn't put for 2 seconds on the screen an abstract of a paper to show that you know what you're talking about, or at least purport to be able to show that that you
Yeah.
know what you're talking about. They're not actually looking for a source. They're just upset. They don't like what you said, and so if there wasn't a 2 second showcase of a paper that they're not even going to read the title of, they're going to say, "Oh, well, this guy did do that, so I'm going to listen to him." It's like that's the problem with this the way that we absorb information nowadays.
Yeah.
It's like 15-second clips of something,
Yeah.
and they're not actually going to ever watch the full video that it comes from. They don't read
Right. They
anything.
don't actually want to understand. They just want to complain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing. That's what, and it's, speaking of that, by the way, speaking of that, because everyone, if you're in the space, you're going to get a lot of criticism, particularly if what you're saying is unorthodox compared to what is being said
Right.
online, at least.
Yeah, if somebody's like,
And
yeah, just you need to drink weight gainer and you need to
yeah,
get your car. Like if you say all the things, that like standard, if it fits your macros, like the difference
yes,
between a candy bar and asparagus is nothing. According to whoever, Lane Norton or
yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah,
person doesn't know what they're talking about.
yeah. But I
Okay.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, um, I believe that you've also been accused, or not really accused, but you've been you've been criticized for promoting, and I know that your promotional, what you promote primarily is fitness related. However, you've mentioned here and there, which is why people know about this, that you don't really consume lots of carbs. You've been accused, or you've been criticized for promoting that way of eating and saying that it's going to help you build muscle, because people will always say, oh well, you can't build that physique without, as we covered, first having a previous physique that you built with something else, um,
Yeah.
but also um, not taking steroids. And so the people that have criticized you, not for taking steroids, but have said, that they've speculated, oh, you're taking something. You must be taking something. You can't build muscle with this way of eating without having taken something. What would you respond with in that regard as well, just to clear the air on this issue once
Sure.
and for
Well,
all?
I never say I'm natural.
Okay.
I say I have a
Yeah.
natural level of testosterone, and those two
Yeah.
things are different. And the reason I
Mm-hmm.
say that is because when I was 28 years old, I was playing club rugby after I graduated for the Sacramento Capitals, and I got hit hard in the crotch, like somebody dropped low, just really short
Mm.
guy, just put his shoulder right in my crotch, and um, yeah, ruptured a testicle. I was in rough shape. And so actually this happened when I was closer to 24. By the time I was 28, um, I'm like on the rugby field and I'm having like heart palpitations when we're just like warming up. And it's like, what the hell
Mm.
is wrong with me? So covered in sweat. I haven't even like the game hasn't started yet. And I remember walking off the field and coach is like, what's going on? And it's like a cold day and there's sweat dripping off my face. And I'm like, dude, there's something really wrong with me. So I go to the hospital. And cardiologist is like, your heart's really weak. And I'm like, dude, I play rugby. That's 80 minutes of sprinting and repositioning. There's no way I have a weak heart. And the guy, just without looking, he didn't have any of my other medical information. He's like, you think you have an okay level of testosterone? And I was like, man, I don't know. But I took a huge hit, which gave me testicular damage. He's like, okay, we need to find out what your testosterone level is. I think your entire problem relates to that. And so, I got a prescription for TRT. Now, TRT, when I got that prescription, um, it fixed my cardiac problem, but I did not gain any muscle. Like it didn't do anything. I just all of a sudden felt way better,
Right.
just from a wellness perspective. So when starting to use variable resistance, having a higher level of testosterone, 1,000 nanograms to deciliter, is that going to make a difference? Yeah. Is it going to make a steroid level difference? No. Because guys that are doing cycles of steroids, they might be it. I think there's only one good study on a steroid level as opposed to a TRT level. I mean, I realize it's semantics, but like there's a study that's in the New England Journal, 600 milligrams per week of injected exogenous testosterone. And that got people to, I think, like 2,500 nanograms of the deciliter. So, like a high level for TRT, or like trying to get you around 1,000, that's not even, that's not even halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when people, uh, I understand why the steroid accusations are out there, because most people who lift weights look like nothing. Like
Yeah.
absolutely, like they never touched a weight. Like you can, like I think the CrossFit people are really funny because they'll talk about their years and years of workouts and injuries and scars and shit. And you look at them and it's just like, dude, I mean, you think like I would never have imagined you've ever worked out, not even one time. Um,
Yeah.
it's I think that's the story, the standard story for people who lift standard weights. For at least 90% of the people, I've got data that says 90%. I think it's more because I think there are people like me who, like, I kept lifting with no results. I just kept on trying to experiment, change the program. Like, what am I doing wrong? And it was like, as soon as I discovered variable resistance, that was the thing. It was like, okay, now I'm growing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it,
So
I would say that somebody who accuses me of taking steroids, like, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I tried posting my blood work a couple times, and somebody always had a question about something they clearly didn't understand, so it just adds more confusion. But also from my TRT, and this is coming out within the next few months, is I take fast acting testosterone, and I only take it in the mornings. So that mirrors the natural circadian rhythm. So because the testosterone drops off later in the day, keep in mind, this is like nobody who takes injectable testosterone has a prescription for it is experiencing what I'm experiencing because I'm doing it differently. Um, because my up and down regulations match the natural up and down regulations, I have no side effects. Like I don't have a hematocrit response. I don't have an SHBG response. I have very little estradiol
mm,
conversion. Like you look at my
hmm.
blood work, it's like you'd say I don't even think this guy's on TRT because
Right.
it's only active in my system for 2 hours a day. So like it's more effective. It attaches to receptor sites to a higher degree. So I might be getting over 2,000 nanograms a deciliter for 1 hour.
Yeah.
Then it drops off.
Yeah.
So it's the total testosterone I'm taking is 105 milligrams per week. Well, that's less than a TRT dosage, but I'm getting better results. But it's also because I just know more about testosterone. I'm using it in a way where it's going to give me more of an effect. You have high testosterone at night, all you get is side effects.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. 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 So I guess we can put that to bed. I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that because there's
yeah,
always I'm
actually,
anticipating those
I like
comments.
that question because I don't think it's a dumb question because most people who lift get nothing out of it, and so they're very
Hmm.
frustrated. But the reason they're frustrated is because their training sucks. It's not I mean, like I had high testosterone for almost 20 years, from, well, 12 years. It's not almost 20, it's 12. So from 28 to 40, I had high testosterone and I still couldn't build muscle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so
that's a
the
key
training makes
detail.
much more difference than testosterone does.
Right. I guess so. I want to clear up. I have two more questions for you. We've talked a lot about training specifically, which is good. I wanted to have you on this for this perspective. You're the first person to actually provide this perspective for my material here. But
Sure.
The question that I'll ask finally in that regard is, you're a big fan of variable resistance. Would you ever do you think that there's ever an indication for static weights? Do you think that some people can incorporate both, or at least maybe they should? Do you think that this is ever appropriate to do, or do you think that people should primarily be employing variable
Funny.
resistance training?
I just asked this question to a seven-time Super Bowl Super Bowl winning strength coach. Um, yeah, and he said, yeah, I mean, there's sometimes you just need a piece of iron to like stretch against or hold at the bottom, like to try and get something to fire right. Like, and he's a strength coach and a physical therapist. It's Alex Guerrero. It's the guy who took care of Tom Brady.
Hmm, okay.
And he was head of strength and conditioning for the Patriots, then the Buccaneers, and now the Raiders. But he's like, it's almost everything that's done in the NFL is variable resistance. Like, so the training experience they're getting is completely different from what you find at a regular gym.
Yeah, that's an important detail.
Yeah.
That's critical to understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like it's variable resistance. He says you walk in the Raiders training room, there's X3s everywhere.
That's what I was going to ask you, if they use your device.
They
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
I wish they'd let me take pictures of it, but those teams, those are billion-dollar brands. Like they don't want you using their brand without like a brand deal. And
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're Pepsi and you can pay them $100 million, they're down. Really,
yeah, yeah.
Jaquish Biomedical is not quite there yet. But they also like if you say something about them that's just true, they're not going to be mad at you. So I can
Right.
say like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
know these like they won't let me get a picture, but and I mean now like I did that interview and I recorded it, and that'll be part of a documentary film that's coming out soon about variable
Good,
resistance.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I can attest. Like, I have a condition, hypermobile EDS. You may have heard of that
Oh yeah.
before. Yeah. And so it heavily impacted my ability to use static weights. Like, everything hurt. I could not work out with that. And for, I think it was 2 years ago or so. I well, it was really 3 years ago that I heard about your device. And I was thoroughly convinced, and I desperately was wanting to do anything to assist in my condition, because adding muscle adds stability to ligaments,
Yeah.
but my inability to build muscle I was having an inability to build muscle because of the ligament problem. So it was just a catch 22. I saw your device and I went, you know what? Let me go ahead and try that. And so I got one. And of course I was very weak, so I could do very little with it anyway. But I remember thinking to myself, oh, my joints don't hurt doing this. It's
Yeah.
just my muscle that hurts, like, which is supposed to happen. I was like, oh wow, this is great. Like, I can use this, and I'm still restricted somewhat. Like, I was too, like, because what would happen is, if I fatigued my muscle enough through proper imposition of weight,
Yeah.
it would hurt too bad, because then I wouldn't have, afterwards, my muscle was fatigued, and so I wasn't able to keep my joint as stable in certain areas, and it still hurt too much. I just have gotten enough treatment to the point where I can actually start using it again. This was actually well timed, because I did my first workout with the X3 in like a year, probably over that.
Okay.
About, like, it was last week. It was a few days ago,
Nice.
when I was like, "Oh, this is great. I can start using it again." And I'm consistently, like, I wouldn't say I'm consistently astonished. I've gotten used to it now, but there's still something in my brain. I'm going, you know, if I contrasted that with a static weight, the amount that I would be able to lift with a static weight would be an incomprehensibly small fraction,
Yeah.
compared to this device. So I can fully attest to that. I
Yeah.
fully encourage anyone to use that may very well have structural problems that we're seeing, skyrocket nowadays. I would highly encourage people to go and invest in that, because that is exactly what it is. It's an investment in your health. It really is.
Yep.
So that's my experience with it. I've never had a bad experience with that. In fact, I get an indirect core workout with it, even though there's not a direct core exercise on the thing.
For
So,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm just sure you know what I've heard you talk about that before with it. It's like, yeah, you
Oh
don't
yeah,
actually have to
the
directly
best,
work
the
your abs
strongest
out.
core, and they're like, "What do you do for core?" Like deadlift,
Nothing. Like, yeah, deadlift. Yeah.
deadlift, squat, like name it.
Squats. Oh yeah. No, I think the squats are the ones that get me the greatest core workout actually. Out of any exercise on that thing.
Probably
So
less so if you use the squat belt.
yeah, I
Like
don't have that.
when you use the squat belt, the stimulus to the quads
Hmm.
is something that you don't see coming. It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe I'd have to try that. I don't have one. I do not have that.
Okay.
So yeah. Um, well, the final question I'll ask is actually not going to be fitness related. It's back to the diet. It's back to the diet. So it might seem like it's a little haphazard, but I really want to ask you this because again, back to that controversy of people reintroducing carbohydrates back in. People have been saying that if you stay on this diet long term, you're going to develop these issues. If they haven't gotten you yet, they will get you. It's on a time. It's on a timer,
What are the
right?
issues that
And
they say? Because I've seen a couple of these videos and like the issues that they say, I'm just like, that's not a thing. But okay.
oh man, yeah, yeah. This is a good one. So I'm not going to pretend like people can't develop problems while on a carnivore diet, but a lot of times it's the way that I mean, look, a diet of milk and beef jerky is carnivore. What are you actually doing? Like what are you doing? You say, oh, when I was carnivore, I had these problems. It's like, yeah, but what was your carnivore diet? And what else were you doing? And what else were you not doing? And
Yeah.
and, and also, what are these problems that you're saying are problems? What if they're not problems at all? And that's
Right.
what
And
that's what I'm actually
were you
about to get
drinking
to.
alcohol during this period of time? Because, there's a lot of
Right.
people who say I'm strict carnivore, but it's like, do you still drink alcohol? Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah. So it's like, yeah,
okay.
the problems that are most commonly cited at the moment, because there's always like one or two times a year, there's always this, oh, carnivore's dying when it's not. This time, what it is higher fasting blood glucose. A fasting blood glucose that tends to trend upward while you're on the diet. That's reflected in your HbA1c value. However, your HbA1c value is affected by two primary things, not just the fasting blood glucose level, and not just the glucose level itself, but also the length of lifespan of your red blood cells, because they can accrue more glycation damage and therefore can artificially inflate your HbA1c. So that's something that's happening.
Mm.
Um, the poor thyroid health, electrolyte wasting kind of thing, that whole Paul Saladino idea, which was ostensibly due to low insulin,
Yeah.
it seemed. So these problems are arising more and more. They're not arising more and more. That's not a good way of putting it. What I should say is that what's going on is that in this bout of carnivore transgression, the controversy, that's been the primary concern for people. And what I've said is what many people have been saying. It was my intuition, but what I said was that, well, your fasting blood glucose going up isn't necessarily a problem. You can actually assess this with like a fructosamine assay, looking at your average glycation rate of your globulins, your albumin, and you're
Yeah.
seeing that despite your fasting blood glucose level being higher, you're actually having lower glycation rate, which is really the problem. Your concern about fasting blood glucose is your glycation rate. That's the whole reason you even look at glucose in the first place. Like unless you're like hypoglycemic and you have like, or you're a type 1 diabetic or something and
Right.
something like that. That's why you look at it. And so if your concern is that, and we look at your fructosamine assay, which is it provides a stronger signal in that respect, and it's low, well, then there's no problem there. And we're seeing this in people that have fasting blood glucose levels that are above 100, like 110. They have pretty low fructosamine assays. Like we need to, again, it's a result of people thinking within the orthodox framework, the siloed area of science, the
Mhm.
settled science. And I mean, you know all about that because
Yeah.
you've been in the space. I mean, you still are in it. I mean, you look at the science, you observe the science
Mhm.
still. Um, you know as well that it's not just about malice and money that's a problem. It's also laziness.
Yeah.
The whole settled science thing. Oh well, we know from 30 years ago that's not true. This is what, and they think within this orthodox antiquated framework. They're
Yeah.
not open to change. And I'm sure. I mean, I know that you're familiar with that because your entire business model is built upon unorthodox thinking about resistance training. At
Yeah.
least,
The funny thing is, I didn't set off to be unorthodox. I set off to find better answers.
right,
I
right,
mean, like
exactly.
if 90%, this statistic from lifehack.com, 90% of people quit their strength training program within 90 days. Or did they do that because they get great results?
Yeah, right.
And no,
Right.
they get no
Yeah.
results. That's why.
Yeah.
So, and it like there are multiple reasons. I think they all kind of relate to similar things, not exhausting enough muscle, not collecting enough fatigue to clearly show a signal. And some of it's malnourishment. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the reason you'll see these ups and downs with carnivore, and I see the people who are trashing it are saying, I tried carnivore and it didn't work, and let me explain why. And then you look at them, and it's like you can just tell why by looking at them. They're fat. So were you really carnivore? Because I don't think you were. Otherwise, you wouldn't be fat.
Yeah, or like yeah, a big problem because there are lots of problems that don't have anything to do with carnivore. Those seem to be the actual problems at hand, which is,
Yeah.
oh well, you transitioned directly overnight, um,
Yeah.
and you
And
screwed
didn't,
up. Yeah, you screwed up your electrolytes and all that stuff, and then you said, well, that's a result of not having carbs. I need carbs. There you go. You're gonna have this problem if you go. It's like, well,
so
that's not.
the example I use, I got to jump after this, but
Yeah,
the
that's fine. That's fine.
example I use is when you have a hydration change, you're going to have health effects. You're going to have headaches and stuff. So, like for example, if you're a cigarette smoker, you constantly have that vasoconstriction mechanism in your system, and
Oh
you
yeah.
quit smoking cigarettes. Now you have blood flow to the brain to the point where you get a headache every day,
Hmm.
and your head is in pain. Well, okay, so you quit smoking and now you feel sick. So does that mean cigarettes are really good for you and you should just keep smoking?
Yep.
No. You just went through a
Exactly.
hydration change.
Or the people that have oxalate dumping after they go carnivore, where they're actually exuding oxalate crystals from like their eyes and skin and their
Yeah,
toes, and it's like, oh, don't go carnivore because you're oxalate dumping. It'll cause oxalate dumping. It's like, hold on a minute, what? That
yeah,
doesn't make any
because that's a
sense.
good
No,
thing.
yeah, it's a good thing. You're actually
The
it's a
people that are come
purging
out,
mechanism.
we need to keep making videos like this just so these people get ignored. Because really, this is just the fat kid inside of those people that are just like, he just wants cake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
And it's
ones that
just like,
get
I'll
yeah,
make a
if
video to justify eating cake. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually a good analogy because it goes back to the having your cake and eating it too. That's what they want to do. They want to be able to have these carbohydrates and actually get away with not being
And then
fat
call,
as a
yeah, and then
result
they
of
want to
it.
call it, healthy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it seems you need carbs for proper insulin signaling or something like that. And it's like, well, what about mine? Because if I didn't have proper insulin signaling, at this point, I'd be dead,
Yeah,
actually.
right.
So, I mean, I don't really know what it's just, it is, it's a load of nonsense. And it's based on, it's based on, I genuinely think, and I don't like cynicism. Actually, it's important to have whenever it's necessary. It's important to have, obviously,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, I think the cynical viewpoint here is the correct one, which is people want to justify their addictions. They want to justify their addictions to having sweet potatoes with honey and maple syrup
Oh,
and their
yeah.
fruit and all that stuff. And it's just like I mean, look, I sympathize. Everyone wants to have carbs and love. Everyone likes the taste of carbs. That
Yeah.
wouldn't it
I
be
mean,
great if you
eating
could
like
have?
an unsupervised child is, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, it
it's a
tastes good,
dream. Hey, but
but
it's like it doesn't make it healthy. It doesn't make it good. So I mean, is it safe to say that you haven't had any of these problems for years? You can dismantle this myth that, oh, if you're carnivore for years
I've
on
had
end, you're going
nothing
to
but
develop these.
upsides. No
Right,
doubt.
right.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. That was my final question for you, man. Yeah, that was it was important to get that perspective as well as someone that's also really active. So you can't even say people can't even say it's because you're oh it's because he's sedentary. If he started working out, then he'd start having those problems. Because I've actually received that criticism before.
Right. It's
Oh
just
well, if
like,
you were active,
I don't
then
skip a workout.
yeah.
No.
And you work out like is it 6 days a week, from my
Yeah.
understanding?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So that's not a concern. So yeah, good, good. Well,
Nice.
Dr. Jaquish, it was good talking to you. For the first time face to face. I know we talked
Yeah,
before,
yeah,
but this is
for
a
sure.
good experience. So thanks for
Yeah.
your input, and we'll keep in touch.
If you get a lot of questions, we'll do another one.
Yeah, good, great,
Awesome.
sounds good.
All right,
All right.
man. See you, Edward.